The Oak Ridge, Tennessee courthouse boils under a 90-degree sun as Sheriff Clayton Voss, a hulking white man with a cocky smirk, struts out, bribery charges dropped. His deputies whoop, drowning out protests, until Zara Cole, a black woman, in a frayed maid's outfit, leaps up from the crowd and yells, "I'm the FBI director." Gasps ripple, then a gunshot cracks the air. She crumples, blood soaking the steps. Justice dead or just waking? Her collapse ignites a fire that'll scorch Oak Ridge forever. What sparked this chaos? Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. And if you're fired up for justice against corruption, hit that like, subscribe, and stick with us for more explosive tales. 6 months before the courthouse erupted in chaos, the air in Oak Ridge, Tennessee hung heavy with the scent of pine and diesel, a rural sprawl of 30,000 souls nestled between rolling hills and cotton fields gone to seed. Inside the squat, brick-walled police station on 3rd Street, the fluorescent lights buzzed like trapped flies, casting a sickly glow over scuffed linoleum floors and peeling paint. Zara Cole, a black woman with eyes sharp as broken glass, pushed a broom across the ground, her shoulders slumped under a faded gray apron 2 sizes too big. Her hair stayed tucked beneath a threadbare cap, her face a mask of exhaustion honed. Over weeks of blending into the background, she was invisible here, a ghost in plain sight, just another low-wage worker the white deputies barely glanced at as they swaggered past, their boots thudding with the weight of unchecked power. To them she was nothing, a shadow scrubbing their filth. To the world beyond these walls, she was Zara Cole, director of the FBI, undercover in a town rotting from the inside out. The station smelled of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, a thick haze clinging to the lockers where deputies swapped crude jokes and tales of petty dominance. Sheriff Clayton Voss leaned against a desk near the break room, his broad frame stretching the seams of his khaki uniform, his badge glinting under the light like a medal he'd stolen rather than earned. At 6'4" and 250 pounds, he towered over his crew, his pale skin flushed with the kind of arrogance that came from owning a place, not serving it. His grey eyes glinted with malice as he propped his dusty boots on a chair, his voice cutting through the chatter like a dull blade. "Caught that Jones kid last night," he said, his lips curling into a sneer. "Malik, 17, black punk walking home through Pineview." Pineview was the white side of town, a grid of tidy lawns and porches where black faces drew stares, and worse. "Had a dime bag on him," Voss continued, his grin widening to show teeth stained from years of dip. "Planted it myself. Keeps Oak Ridge pure, you know. Can't let their kind think they belong here." The deputies chuckled, a low guttural sound that slithered through the room like a snake through tall grass. Tommy Burke, a wiry man with a buzz cut and a faded Confederate tattoo peeking from his sleeve, slapped his knee, his laugh sharp and mean. "Should have seen his mama crying when we cuffed him," he said, his voice dripping with mock pity. "Begging like that changes anything." Another deputy, a squat guy named Earl Dodd with a gut spilling over his belt, nodded as he lit a cigarette, the flame flickering in his bloodshot eyes. "Good work, boss," he muttered, exhaling a cloud that drifted toward Zara. She kept her head down, sweeping closer, the bristles scraping softly against the floor, her heart pounding so loud she swore they'd hear it. Under her oversized apron, a tiny recorder hummed against her chest, its red light blinking silently through the fabric. Every word Voss spat was gold, a confession of corruption and racism so blatant it could topple his empire if it ever hit the right ears. Zara gripped the broom tighter, her knuckles whitening under her dark skin, her nails digging into the wood until splinters bit back. She'd spent 39 days in this hellhole, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, watching this station fester like an open wound. Voss ran Oak Ridge like a feudal lord, his deputies his enforcers, the black folks his prey. Malik Jones wasn't. The first kid he'd framed, just the latest in a long line of names she'd memorized. Tanisha Reed, 16, busted for loitering with a fake joint. Darnell Brooks, 19, locked up for resisting after a beating left him limp. Zara had grown up 30 miles from here, in a clapboard house where her mama taught her to keep her head high despite the slurs thrown from passing trucks. She'd clawed her way to the top of the FBI, 42 years old and fearless. But Oakridge was personal. This wasn't just a case, it was a reckoning. She edged closer to Voss, her broom whispering against the floor, her breath shallow as she angled the recorder. He was mid-rant now, his voice rising with a venom that made her stomach twist. "Their kind multiply like roaches," he said, spitting into a styrofoam cup. "Gotta stamp 'em out before they ruin what we built. Malik's just the start." Burke nodded, cracking his knuckles. "Heard his daddy's got a shotgun. Might need a visit." Voss laughed, a sound like gravel crunching under tires. "Make it quick. No loose ends." Zara's fingers itched to rip the recorder out and shove it in his smug face, to scream that she'd bury him with his own words. But she stayed still, sweeping, waiting. She knew the game. Evidence first, then the strike. One slip and she'd be the one in cuffs, her cover blown, her mission dead. That night, she slipped out the station's back door, the humid southern air hitting her like a wet slap. Oakridge slept fitfully under a sky black as coal, its ramshackle homes and rusted trailers hunched together, windows dark. She moved fast, her sneakers silent on cracked pavement, heading for Malik's house 3 blocks away. She had to warn them, had to see what Voss would do next. The recorder weighed heavy in her pocket, a lifeline she clutched as she rounded a corner. Then she smelled it, smoke, sharp and acrid, curling through the stillness. Her chest tightened. As she broke into a run, her lungs burning, her eyes watering as she reached Malik's street. Orange flames licked the sky, the Jones family's small wooden house a roaring inferno, the old boards snapping like bones. Shadows danced in the glow, and there stood Voss, leaning against his cruiser 50 yards off, his pale face lit by the fire, his smirk curling like the smoke. Zara ducked behind a sagging oak, her breath ragged, her hands trembling as she watched. Malik's mother, a wiry woman named Grace, stumbled from the blaze, her nightgown singed, her screams raw as she clawed at the ground. "My boy! My boy!" she wailed, her voice breaking over the crackle. Malik was still in jail, but Grace didn't know if anyone else had made it out. Voss didn't move, just watched, his arms crossed, his deputies flanking him like wolves. Burke tossed a lighter into the dirt, chuckling. "Arson," Voss called out, loud enough for the gathering neighbors to hear. "Shame Malik's prints'll be all over this. Guess he wanted revenge." The lie hung thick, unchallenged, as Grace's sobs turned to gasps, her hands clutching ash. Zara's stomach dropped, her knees nearly buckling. She'd thought the recording was her strike, her chance to crack Voss's armor. She'd caught him confessing, had proof of his filth, and for a moment she'd felt the thrill of victory. But this was no petty frame-up. This was a message, a torch lit to burn out defiance, to show Oakridge's black families what happened when they dared to exist. Voss had struck first, harder, uglier, turning her quiet move into his loud war. She clenched her fists, the recorder's edges biting into her palm. Her cover held, her mission lived, but the fire wasn't just a house burning, it was her plan, singed at the edges, her hope flickering in the heat. She'd underestimated him, thought words could cage a beast. Now Grace's home was cinders, and Voss's grin promised more. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but as the flames climbed, higher, Zara knew one truth. He'd played dirtier than she'd ever imagined, and Oakridge's black souls were his fuel. The sun dipped low over Oakridge, Tennessee, painting the sky a bruised purple, as Zara Cole slipped through the shadows of 4th Street, her sneakers crunching on gravel still warm from the day's 95-degree heat. Her apron hung heavy, with the weight of the recorder, its tiny casing scratched but humming with Sheriff Clayton Voss's damning words from the night before. Grace Jones's screams still echoed in her skull, the image of that blazing house seared into her retinas, like a brand. She'd caught Voss bragging about framing Malik, his racist venom spilling out like oil, and now she had it on tape. Could this be the spark to ignite justice in this suffocating town? Her pulse thumped as she rounded a corner, the air thick, with the buzz of cicadas and the faint tang of smoke lingering from the arson. She wasn't heading back to the station tonight. She had a meeting that could change everything. 3 blocks from the torched remains of Malik's home stood a sagging barber shop, its faded sign reading Hill's Cuts in peeling red paint. Inside, Jerome Hill perched on a rickety stool, a wiry black man in his 30s, with a voice that could shake walls and eyes that burned with a fire Zara recognized. Defiance. He wore a worn denim jacket, his knuckles scarred from years of fighting a system that never fought fair. She'd met him weeks ago, posing as a maid needing a trim, and slipped him whispers of her mission. Now, as she pushed through the creaking door, the bell jangling overhead, he looked up from a warm beer, his gaze narrowing. "You got something real this time?" he asked, his tone low and urgent, like a man who'd heard too many empty promises. Zara didn't waste breath on words. She pulled the recorder from her pocket, pressed play, and let Voss's voice fill the cramped room, crackling through the static. "Planted it myself. Keeps Oak Ridge pure, you know. Can't let their kind think they belong here." Jerome's jaw tightened, his fists clenching as the sheriff's smug rant rolled on, boasting about Malik's frame-up and the roaches he aimed to crush. The recording clicked off, and silence hung thick between them, broken only by the hum of a flickering bulb. Jerome's voice trembled when he spoke, a mix of hope and fury twisting his words. "This is it, ain't it? We can bury that bastard with this." Zara nodded, her heart pounding with a flicker of triumph she hadn't felt since she'd stepped into this town. She'd done it, handed Jerome the match to light Oak Ridge ablaze. Was this the moment the tide turned? She pictured Voss in cuffs, his smirk wiped clean, the black families of this rotting sprawl finally breathing free. Jerome leapt up, his stool clattering, and grabbed a megaphone from a shelf stacked with old razors and faded photos. "Tomorrow," he said, his grin fierce, "we take it to the streets." Zara slipped back into the night, her cap pulled low, blending into the edges as she returned to her rented room above a laundromat, the recorder's echo loud in her mind. She let herself believe it. This was the spark, the beginning of his. By noon the next day, the air outside the Oak Ridge police station shimmered with heat and rage. Jerome stood on a milk crate in the parking lot, his megaphone blaring Voss's confession on a loop, the sheriff's voice crackling through. The crowd like a whip. "Planted it myself, keeps Oak Ridge pure." Black faces, tired and angry, swelled around him, 50 then 100 chanting Malik's name, their signs scrawled with "Free our kids" and "Justice now" in bold marker. Zara watched from a distance, her cap shading her eyes, her pulse racing as the protest grew. Men in overalls, women with braids and weary stares, kids clutching their mothers' hands, all roaring as one. The cicadas fell silent, drowned by the shouts, the air electric with something raw and alive. Could this be the uprising she'd dreamed of? Jerome's voice boomed over the chaos. "We got proof. Voss framed Malik, burned Grace's house. He's a coward hiding behind a badge." The crowd surged, fists pumping, their fury a wall of sound that shook the station's grimy windows. Zara's chest swelled, her lips twitching into a ghost of a smile. For a moment it felt real, like justice might actually claw its way out of this swamp. The recording was undeniable, a blade aimed at Voss's throat, and the town was listening. She imagined the sheriff squirming inside, his deputies scrambling, the white folks in Pineview clutching their pearls as their king faced the gallows. Was this the crack in his armor she'd been waiting for? She edged closer, blending with the fringes, her broom long forgotten back at the station. The crowd swelled to 200, their shouts a thunderclap rolling over the hills. She let herself hope, let herself think this was it. Voss's reign teetering, her mission breaking through. But Clayton Voss wasn't a man who bent to noise. By dusk, the air turned sour, the sharp sting of gasoline cutting through the evening stillness like a blade. Zara smelled it before she saw it, her stomach lurching as she spun toward Jerome's beat-up Chevy parked 50 feet away. What was that glint in the fading light? A bottle arced through the air, trailing a rag that flared orange mid-flight and smashed into the car's hood. The explosion ripped the world apart, a deafening boom that flung glass and metal in every direction, the fireball swallowing the vehicle whole. Screams pierced the chaos as the crowd scattered, bodies hitting the pavement, blood pooling fast. Jerome flew backward, his jacket ablaze, his megaphone clattering as he crumpled lifeless. 10 yards from where he'd stood. Two others, a teenage girl and an old man with a cane, lay still nearby, their signs charred beside them, the words, "Justice now," smoldering into ash. Zara stumbled back, her ears ringing, her eyes watering as the heat blasted her face. She pushed through the fleeing mass, her cap slipping, her breath hitching as she searched for survivors. What had just happened? The crowd parted, and there stood Voss, striding from the station's front doors, his pale face glowing in the firelight, his smirk curling like a snake's tail. His deputies flanked him, Tommy Burke twirling a lighter in his fingers, Earl Dodd cradling a shotgun. "Arson!" Voss shouted, his voice booming over the wails. "Looks like them black radicals couldn't handle losing. Planted this mess themselves." He kicked a shard of glass toward the burning wreck, his grin widening as Burke tossed a singed bag of evidence into the dirt, a fake bomb casing marked with prints they'd claim were Jerome's. Zara froze, her broom long gone, her cover still intact but her plan in ruins. The crowd's fury melted into fear, mothers clutching kids, men backing away as deputies advanced, their guns drawn. She'd thought the recording would shatter Voss's grip, that Jerome's rally would force the truth into the light. Could she have been so wrong? Her stomach dropped as she saw Grace Jones among the onlookers, her face streaked with soot and tears, staring at the flames that had taken her home and now her hope. Voss had turned it all against them, twisted her strike into his weapon. 3 dead, the protest snuffed out, the recording's power flipped into a lie that branded the black community as terrorists. Her fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms as Voss's eyes scanned the chaos, missing her in the haze. What kind of monster burned his own town to keep it white? She'd handed Jerome the match, thought it'd light a fire under Voss, but he'd poured gasoline on it instead, struck back harder, uglier, deadlier. The Chevy's frame collapsed in on itself, embers spiraling into the dusk, and Zara's hope flickered with it. This wasn't the beginning of his end, it was his victory lap. She slipped into the crowd's edge, her cap low, her mind racing. The recorder was still hers, but its echo felt hollow now. How could she fight a man who turned truth into ash? Drop a comment number 1 if you're raging at Voss's ruthless game, hit that like if you're stunned by this twist, and subscribe. To see Zara strike back, where does she go when her spark becomes his inferno? The night after Jerome Hill's car erupted in flames hung heavy over Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the air thick with the stench of gasoline and grief. Inside the police station on 3rd Street, the fluorescent lights flickered like a dying pulse, casting jagged shadows across the linoleum. Zara Cole swept with a broom that felt heavier than ever. Her cap sat low, shading eyes still raw from smoke, her apron concealing the recorder that now felt like a lead weight against her chest. Jerome's death, the girls', the old man's, their charred bodies haunted her, a reel of loss playing behind her lids every time she blinked. She'd handed him the match, thought it'd burn Voss down, but he'd turned it into a bonfire, of his own making. Now the town buzzed with whispers of black radicals, the protest's ashes hardening into a lie that clung to her people like soot. She gripped the broom tighter, her knuckles aching, her resolve fraying but unbroken. She wasn't done. Not yet. The station hummed with a different energy tonight, the deputies high on their win, their laughter grating against her ears like sandpaper on skin. She moved closer to the break room, her broom whispering across the floor, catching fragments of their smug recounting. Sheriff Clayton Voss strutted past, his boots clicking on the tiles, his broad frame filling the doorway as he leaned against the jamb, his voice dripping with triumph. "Told you, boys," he said, his grey eyes glinting, under the light. "Can't let 'em get loud. Burn it down, pin it on one of theirs, and they shut up fast." Tommy Burke grunted approval, cracking his knuckles, his Confederate tattoo flexing as he smirked. "Crowd scattered like roaches when that Chevy blew," he said, his tone thick with glee. "Jerome's toast, and Malik's next." Zara's stomach twisted, her breath catching as she swept nearer, the recorder humming silently against her ribs. Malik Jones, still locked up from Voss's frame-up. His mother Grace, homeless and broken after the fire. She'd seen his file. 17, lanky, a basketball star with a quiet smile, now a pawn in Voss's racist game. The deputy's chatter shifted, and Earl Dodd's voice cut through, low and feral. "Boone's got the kid tonight," he said, lighting a cigarette, the flame dancing in his bloodshot eyes. "Streaming it live for the boys, teach him his place." Zara's broom froze mid-sweep, her heart hammering. Ray Klein, Voss's hulking deputy, a 6'5" slab of muscle, with a shaved head and a swastika inked across his forearm, was known for his fists. She'd seen him break a man's jaw for looking at him wrong. If he was with Malik now, this wasn't just a beating, it was a slaughter. She slipped down the hall, her sneakers silent, her pulse a drumbeat as she neared the jail wing. The air grew damp, the concrete walls slick with mildew that never dried in the muggy southern heat. Through a rusted grate, she glimpsed the cell block, a grey tomb stinking of sweat and rust. Malik sat slumped against the bars, his lip busted, one eye swollen shut, his breath shallow in the dim light. Klein towered over him, a mountain of hate in a khaki uniform, his phone propped on a ledge, its screen glowing as it streamed live. "Time to learn, boy," he growled, his voice thick with venom, his tattoo rippling as he cracked his knuckles. He grabbed Malik by the collar, yanking him up, and slammed him against the wall, the kid's head snapping back with a groan. Klein's fist crashed into his stomach, a sickening thud that doubled Malik over. Then another to his ribs, the crack audible even through the grate. Zara's breath hitched, her hands trembling as she watched, the broom clattering softly against the floor. Klein roared, spittle flying. "You think you're tough? Black lives don't mean squat here, you hear me?" Each word was a blade, punctuated by another punch, this one splitting Malik's lip, blood trickling down his chin. The phone's light caught his fluttering eyes, his body crumpling as Klein laughed, a guttural bark that made her stomach lurch. He kicked Malik once more, the boot's thud against flesh echoing like a gunshot, and the kid went limp, blood pooling beneath him. Zara's chest burned, her mind racing. She couldn't just watch this, could she? He was 17, beaten for nothing but the color of his skin, and Klein's buddies were cheering through that damn stream. She dropped the broom, darted to a wall phone 10 feet away, and dialed 911, her voice a hurried whisper. "Ambulance to Oak Ridge Jail, prisoner down, hurry!" She hung up before they could ask more, her pulse racing as she slipped back to her broom, her breath ragged. Klein didn't notice, too busy flexing for his audience, his chest heaving with pride as he wiped blood from his knuckles. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but growing, and Zara exhaled, her hands shaking as she swept again. The floor a blood. She'd done it, hadn't she? Malik would live because of her, heading to Mercy Hospital 3 miles away. She clung to that thought, letting it steady her, picturing him waking up, breathing, maybe even thanking her one day when this was over. Wasn't that worth the risk? Paramedics burst in minutes later, 2 white guys in blue who hesitated when they saw Klein looming over Malik's limp form. "Self-defense," Klein grunted, shutting off the stream, his lie as bold as his swagger. They didn't argue, just loaded Malik onto a stretcher and hauled him out, the jail falling eerily quiet. Zara kept sweeping, her cap low, her heart still pounding. She'd saved him, cracked Voss's machine just a sliver. She imagined him in a hospital bed, safe, a chance to pull this whole mess apart. But Clayton Voss didn't let cracks widen. An hour later, as she emptied a trash can near the break room, she caught Klein's low chuckle, his voice slithering through the chatter. "Boss took care of it," he said to Burke, his tattooed arm flexing as he smirked. "Planted 2 ounces of meth in the kid's hospital bed while he was out. Docs found it, called us right back." Zara's blood froze, her grip on the bucket tightening until her nails bit into her palms. She crept closer, her bucket rattling softly, and heard Burke laugh. "Kid's done now," he said, lighting a cigarette. Another black junkie caught. Dirty. Her stomach dropped, her earlier hope curdling into ash. She'd saved Malik from Klein's fists only to deliver him to Voss's web. The ambulance call had felt like a win, a lifeline, but Voss had snatched it away, twisted it into something uglier. She slipped out later, her shift done, and ran to the hospital under a sky heavy with storm clouds, her lungs burning. Peering through a window, her breath fogging the glass, she saw Malik hooked to an IV, pale and still. A cop stationed outside his room. A nurse shuffled past, muttering about drug trash, her tone sharp. Voss had spun it perfectly, hadn't he? The town would eat it up, no questions asked. Zara's chest burned, her fists clenching as she backed away, the rain starting to fall in fat, angry drops. She'd underestimated Voss again, thought a quick move could outsmart his machine. How could she have been so naive? Malik was alive, but chained tighter than ever. His name smeared further, Grace's fight snuffed out. The station buzzed with victory the next morning, Voss strutting in, his grin wide enough to split his face. "Told you," he said to Klein, clapping his shoulder. "One call to the right people and it's done. Hospital's ours, court's ours, kids finished." Klein smirked, miming a punch, and they didn't see Zara, didn't care, but she saw them, every move searing into her. Her win had been a mirage, and now she was the fool. She swept past, her cap low, her rage simmering beneath the mask. This fight was hers now, and she'd make him bleed for it because Voss's kingdom wasn't just the station. It was Oakridge itself, and she was the enemy he didn't see coming. The Oakridge jail stank of mildew and despair, its concrete walls cold and slick under a flickering bulb that buzzed like a trapped wasp. Zara Cole sat on a metal bench in her cell, her wrists raw from the cuffs Deputy Ray Klein had snapped on her hours ago, her ribs throbbing from his fists that had cracked them like dry twigs. Blood crusted on her lip, a bitter taste she couldn't shake, and bruises bloomed across her dark skin, a map of pain etched by his swastika-tattooed hands. She'd called that ambulance for Malik Jones, thought she'd saved him from Klein's brutality, only to watch Sheriff Clayton Voss twist it into a trap, planting meth in the kid's hospital bed. Her victory had been a ghost, vanishing in the smirk of a man who owned this town's soul. Now she was locked up, her cover as a janitor teetering, her mission dangling by a thread. Could she still claw her way out of this pit? The cell block was a grey cavern, its air heavy with the damp rot of a Tennessee summer, 90 degrees even at midnight. She shifted, wincing as her ribs protested, her eyes scanning the shadows for anything to turn this around. Malik was alive but shackled tighter than ever, Grace's hope snuffed out, and Jerome's rally a smoldering memory. Voss's voice still echoed in her skull, gloating about the bombing, the beating, the meth. She'd underestimated him, thought. Her recorder could cage a beast who burned houses and broke kids for sport. Was there even a crack left in his armor? Then she saw it. A rusted vent high on the wall, its screws loose, just wide enough for her hand. She stood, her legs shaky, and climbed the bench, her ribs screaming as she stretched, her fingers pried. At the grate, metal groaning as it gave way, dust pouring out to sting her eyes. She reached inside, her breath hitching, and pulled out a leather-bound ledger, its edges worn but its weight solid. Zara sank back, clutching it, her pulse spiking as she flipped it open in the dim light. Rows of numbers and names sprawled across. The pages, a meticulous record of Oakridge's rot. Pineview Land Commission 5000, shut down Black Store on Elm, one entry read, dated 3 months back. Jones Kid 2000, drugs, keep him quiet, another scrawled in Voss's jagged hand, pinned to the night Malik was framed. Hill Rally, 10,000, burn it, send a message, tied to Jerome's death. Her breath caught, shallow and sharp. This wasn't just corruption. It was a blueprint for genocide, a racist empire built on black ruin, block by block. Could this be the sledgehammer to smash Voss's throne? She traced the lines, her fingers trembling, picturing him in cuffs, his deputies scrambling. The white elite of Oakridge choking on their own filth. This was gold, wasn't it? Proof no one could ignore. She'd been in this cell since Klein dragged her from the station, his boots crashing into her ribs, his voice thick with hate. Evidence tampering, he'd spat, tossing a forged file at her feet, claiming she'd planted the meth herself. The lie was bold, but it stuck, her janitor cover bending under the weight. Now, with the ledger in her hands, she saw a way out. She had to get it to Agent Lena Price, her FBI contact. A woman she'd trusted since Quantico, 5'2" with a stare that could cut steel. Lena was 30 miles away in Knoxville, waiting for the signal to swoop in. Zara slipped the ledger under her apron, her mind racing. How could she smuggle this past Klein's goons? She waited, counting the minutes, until the guard shift changed. At 2 in the morning, a skinny deputy named Pike dozing off in the hall. She crept to the bars, her ribs afire that wouldn't fade, and slipped the ledger into a torn seam of her mattress, scribbling a note on a scrap of paper. Urgent. Voss's playbook, systemic. Dawn broke grey and humid, the station stirring with grunts and coffee slurps as Pike hauled her out for cleaning duty. She shuffled to the mailroom, her cap low, the ledger tucked against her chest, her heart pounding as she reached a rusted mailbox 2 streets over. She'd scoped it days ago, a dead drop for Lena. She shoved the ledger inside, sealing it with a prayer, and darted back, her sneakers slapping pavement, rain starting to fall in thin sheets. Relief flooded her, a rush that loosened her shoulders for the first time in weeks. Had she just struck gold? She pictured Lena opening it, the feds rolling in, Voss's empire crumbling under the weight of his own words. She swept the station floor that morning, her broom a blur, imagining Klein in a cell, Malik-free, Grace rebuilding. Was this her first real win? But Clayton Voss didn't sleep on threats. By noon, the station erupted in chaos, deputies shouting, radios crackling like angry hornets. Zara lingered near the dispatch desk, her bucket sloshing as she strained to hear. Klein burst in, his face red, his tattooed arm swinging a charred mess of leather and paper. He tossed it onto Voss's desk as the sheriff stormed out, his boots thudding. "Caught it at the post office," Klein barked, his voice a growl. "Some bastard tried mailing this." Voss's eyes narrowed, flipping through the singed remains, his jaw tightening as he recognized his own handwriting. "My ledger," he snarled, his tone low and dangerous like a storm rolling in. "Who the hell got this?" Zara's stomach plummeted, her mop stilled, her breath catching. How had he intercepted it? She'd been so careful, hadn't she? Voss didn't waste time. He grabbed a lighter from his desk, flicked it on, and set the ledger ablaze right there, flames licking up the pages, turning evidence to ash. "Gone," now he said, his grin twisting as smoke curled into the air. "But someone's playing games." He turned to Klein, his voice dropping to a hiss. "Find out who and make it hurt." Zara's knees weakened, her mind racing. Lena had to have it, didn't she? But Voss's move was faster, dirtier, his claws sharper than she'd guessed. Then Klein pulled a file from his pocket, slapping it down with a smirk. "Planted this. Finstead," he said, his eyes glinting. "Evidence tampering pinned on that janitor who's been sniffing around." Voss opened it, revealing forged photos. Zara near his office, her hands on a drawer, timestamps faked to match last night. Her breath caught, her pulse a drumbeat. "Zara Cole," Voss read aloud, tasting the name, his gaze glinting with malice. "Thought she could outsmart me." Her mop clattered, her hands trembling as she backed away, the station's hum swallowing her panic. He didn't know she was FBI, didn't know the half of it, but he knew enough. Klein cracked his knuckles, his sneer widening. "Time for a visit," he said, his boots thudding closer. She'd lost the ledger, her golden ticket, and now they were coming for her. The town turned sour by dusk. White folks nodding over their coffee at the diner, their voices smug. "Knew she was trouble," one said, a gray-haired man in a trucker hat. "Stealing from the station, probably dealing too." The lie spread fast, her hope burning with the ledger's ashes. She'd thought it was safe, thought she'd outplayed them. Could she have misjudged so badly? That night, Klein's cruiser roared up to her room, his fist splintering the door, and she knew this was her punishment for daring to fight. Drop a comment number 1 if you're furious Klein torched Zara's evidence, hit that like if you're shocked by this twist, and subscribe to see her next move. Can she escape the noose Voss just tightened? The Oak Ridge jail was a tomb of cold concrete, its air thick with the sour reek of sweat and rust, the kind of place where hope curled up and died. Zara Cole slumped against the metal bench in her cell, her ribs a throbbing furnace from Ray Klein's fists. Her wrists chafed raw from the cuffs that bit into her skin. Blood crusted her lip, a bitter reminder of his beating, and her dark skin bloomed with bruises, each one a mark of his swastika-tattooed rage. She'd found Voss's ledger, mailed it to Agent Lena Price, thought she'd struck gold, only to watch Klein torch it and frame her with fake photos of theft. her cover as a janitor hung by a thread, her mission teetering on the edge of ruin. The station buzzed with victory, Sheriff Clayton Voss's laugh echoing through the halls, his voice smug as he'd read her name aloud, Zara Cole, tasting it like a hunter savoring prey. She was trapped, wasn't she? But surrender wasn't. In her blood, the cell block's dim light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the slick walls, the humidity pressing down like a wet blanket even at 3 in the morning. She'd been locked here since Klein dragged her from her room, his boots crashing into her sides, his voice thick with venom. "You're nothing here," he'd spat, tossing the forged file at her feet, pinning her as a thief. Now, as the guard shift lulled, a skinny deputy named Pike snoring softly in the hall, Zara's eyes locked on the rusted vent she'd pried open the night before. It was her lifeline, wasn't it? She stood, her ribs screaming, her legs shaky from the beating, and climbed the bench, her breath shallow as she gripped the grate. It groaned under her fingers, dust spilling out to sting her eyes, but she hauled herself up, squeezing into the tight, dark shaft, her elbows scraping raw against the grime. The vent twisted like a snake, its stale air choking her as she crawled. Inch by inch, her ribs afire that wouldn't fade, her apron snagging on jagged edges. She pictured Voss's face when he found her gone, his smug grin cracking, and it fueled her, pushing her through the pain. Could she really slip his noose? The shaft dropped her into a storage room, brooms and boxes scattered in the gloom, the faint hum of a generator vibrating through the floor. She kicked the door open, stumbling into the night, the humid air hitting her like a slap. Oakridge slept uneasily under a moonless sky, its clapboard houses hunched together, windows dark. She ran, her lungs burning, her sneakers pounding pavement, still warm from the day's heat, heading for a gas station half a mile away. The neon sign buzzed in the dark, a grimy payphone standing under a flickering light like a beacon. Zara fumbled coins from her pocket, her hands trembling, her ribs a pulsing ache as she dialed Lena's burner number. The line crackled, then clicked, and Lena's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. "Zara, where are you?" Her tone was a lifeline, pulling Zara from the edge. "Jailbreak," Zara rasped, her voice hoarse, her breath ragged. "Send help now." Lena didn't hesitate. "Hold tight, team's en route, 2 hours out." The call ended, and Zara hung up, her knees weak, leaning against the booth as the night pressed in. She'd escaped, alerted the feds, turned the tables, hadn't she? The crickets chirped, a rare car's headlights washing over her, and she tasted freedom, fleeting but real. 2 hours, and this nightmare might end. She sank into the shadows, her chest heaving, imagining Voss in cuffs, Klein scrambling, Oakridge's, black families breathing free. Was this her chance to strike back? But Clayton Voss didn't let prey slip away. Dawn broke with sirens wailing, a chorus of rage slicing through the stillness as Zara hid in a ditch near the gas station, peering out through tall grass wet with dew. Voss's black cruiser screeched into view, its tires kicking up gravel. His pale face twisted in fury as he leapt out, slamming his fist on the hood. "She's gone!" he bellowed, his voice a thunderclap, deputies spilling from the vehicle like ants from a kicked hill. Ray Klein stepped up, his hulking frame a wall of muscle, his tattooed arm flexing as he growled, "Broke out violent escape, armed and dangerous." Voss nodded, his grey eyes scanning the horizon, his lips curling into a snarl. "Shoot on!" Sight boys spread it wide. Radios crackled, the order echoing across Oakridge, a manhunt born from her defiance. What had she unleashed? Zara's stomach sank, her body sinking lower into the mud, soaking her torn apron. She thought the vent was freedom, the call a lifeline, but Voss had flipped it, painted her as a feral criminal. The gas station clerk, a white kid with a nervous twitch, ran out, pointing toward her ditch. "Saw her there," he yelled, his voice high and shaky. Klein grinned, drawing his pistol, its barrel glinting in the early light. She bolted, thorns tearing at her legs, her breath a rasp. As shots rang out, bullets chewing dirt inches from her feet. One grazed her arm, a hot sting that made her gasp. Blood welling up fast, but she kept moving, diving into an alley off Main Street. Her escape had been a win, a bold move, but Voss's machine roared back louder, deadlier. Could she outrun? This Oak Ridge's streets buzzed with cruisers by mid-morning, white faces peering from windows, all hunting her now. Voss's voice blasted from a loudspeaker rigged to his cruiser, chillingly calm as it rolled through the town. "Zara Cole, armed fugitive, murderer, thief, danger to our pure Oak Ridge. Turn yourself in or we'll find you." The lie was bold, insane, but it stuck, didn't it? She'd slipped his cell, thought she'd outsmarted him, but now she was prey in a town-turned trap. Every corner hid a threat, every shadow a gun. She ducked behind a dumpster, her arm throbbing, her ribs afire that wouldn't quit, the blood soaking her sleeve, a dark, sticky mess. Klein's boots echoed nearby, his shadow looming as he swept the alley, his growl carrying on the wind. "Gonna gut you myself," he muttered, his pistol tapping his thigh. The air split with shouts, a white mob spilling from Pineview, their bats and pipes raised, their voices a chorus of hate. "Get her!" a woman screeched, her blonde hair tangled, her kids clutching rocks. "She's stealing our town," a man spat, waving a Confederate flag, his sunburned neck flushed with rage. They cornered her, 50 strong, their eyes wild, chanting slurs that cut deeper than knives. "No place for her kind," a teenage boy yelled, hurling a stone that clipped her shoulder, pain flaring white-hot. Voss watched from his cruiser, his arms crossed, his smirk wide as the crowd closed in. Had she just signed her death warrant? Zara pressed against the dumpster, her breath shallow, her vision swimming as the mob advanced, their weapons glinting in the sun. She'd called Lena, thought 2 hours would save her, but Voss had turned Oak Ridge into a lynch mob faster than she'd dreamed. Her arm bled freely now, her ribs a furnace of agony, and the alley offered no escape, its brick walls a cage. The first blow came, a bat swinging toward her head, and she ducked, the air whooshing past. Another struck her leg, a pipe's thud sending her staggering, her knees buckling. She'd escaped the jail, tasted freedom, but now she was trapped, surrounded by a town that wanted her dead for daring to fight. Klein's laugh rose over the chaos, his pistol raised, and she knew this was his game now, and she was the prize. The Oak Ridge night wrapped around Zara Cole like a shroud, the air thick with humidity, and the distant wail of sirens cutting through the dark. She stumbled through an alley off Main Street, her arm bleeding from Ray Klein's grazing bullet, her ribs a pulsing inferno from the white mob's pipes and bats. Her apron hung in tatters, soaked with sweat and blood, her cap lost somewhere in the chaos of her jailbreak gone wrong. Sheriff Clayton Voss had turned the town into a hunting ground, his loudspeaker branding her an armed fugitive, his deputies and Pineview's residents closing in like wolves. She'd escaped the jail, called Agent Lena Price for FBI backup, thought she'd turned the tables, only to find herself cornered, beaten and hunted. Could she still find a way to breathe in this suffocating trap? Her legs burned as she staggered toward the black side of town, the only place left that might shield her. Mama Ruth's diner loomed ahead, a squat brick building on Cedar Lane, its neon open sign flickering like a fragile promise against the night. Ruth Jackson, a stout woman in her 60s with gray braids and hands toughened by decades of frying chicken, spotted Zara through the window, her sharp eyes narrowing. She yanked the door open, her voice a low hiss. "Get in here, girl, quick!" Zara stumbled inside, the smell of grease and cornbread washing over her, a sanctuary amid the storm. Ruth locked the door, her movements swift despite her age, and shoved Zara toward a booth in the back, its vinyl cracked but soft. "Voss is hunting you," she whispered, her tone rough with worry. "Stay low, you hurt bad?" Zara nodded, her breath shallow, peering through a crack in the blinds as headlights prowled the streets. Was this her last refuge? Ruth brewed coffee, her silence a shield, as she slid a mug across the table, the steam curling up in the dim light. Zara's hands shook as she pulled a stolen phone from her pocket, a banged-up burner she'd swiped from the gas station clerk before bolting. Her arm throbbed, blood dripping onto the table, but she steadied the lens, aiming it outside. Could this device turn the tide? The diner's windows framed a nightmare unfolding across the street. Klein, his hulking frame a silhouette against. The glow dragged a black teen, barely 16, skinny with a faded hoodie, toward a lamppost. A rope dangled from his tattooed hand, the swastika glinting as he looped it around the kid's neck. "Time to clean this town," he growled, his voice carrying over the crickets, yanking the boy up as his feet kicked air. A crowd gathered, white faces from Pineview, their phones out, filming the lynching like a twisted celebration, their cheers a sick chorus. Zara's camera shook, capturing every second, the rope tightening, the teen's gasps fading to silence. Klein's laugh booming as he tied the knot. Her stomach churned, rage and guilt clawing at her chest. Was this her fault for stirring the hornet's nest? She'd run here for safety, hadn't she? Now another kid was dead because Voss's machine wouldn't stop. Ruth gripped her shoulder, her voice a rasp. "Go now," she hissed, shoving Zara toward the kitchen as Klein's boots thudded closer, his shadow looming. Zara stumbled through the back door, the phone clutched tight, her breath a jagged rasp as she ducked behind a trash bin in the alley. Her fingers flew, uploading the video to a cloud server Jerome had once mentioned, her heart pounding as it hit the internet. Within minutes, alerts buzzed. Oak Ridge lynching goes viral. Protests flared online, hashtags trending, voices screaming for justice. Had she just lit a beacon to burn Voss down? She crouched in the shadows, her chest heaving, the phone's glow a lifeline in the dark. The world was watching now, wasn't it? Klein exposed in his filth, Voss's empire cracking under the spotlight. She pictured news trucks rolling in, the feds speeding up, the nation's outrage shattering Oak Ridge's silence. The teen's death wasn't for nothing, was it? She'd made it mean something, a spark to ignite the reckoning. Her arm bled freely, her ribs afire, but hope flickered, fragile but alive. She imagined Voss pacing, his grin faltering as the internet raged. Could this be the crack she'd been chasing? The diner stood quiet behind her, Ruth's coffee still, warm in her mind, a fleeting calm before the storm she'd unleashed. But Clayton Voss didn't bow to light. By sunrise, the streets hummed with a darker tune, deputies combing the town, their radios crackling like angry static. Zara hid behind the bin, her burner buzzing as she checked the upload. The video was gone, scrubbed from every platform, replaced with a headline, "Fake news hoax targets heroic sheriff." Her stomach dropped, her breath catching as Klein stormed the gas station nearby, smashing the clerk's phone, his growl cutting through the morning stillness. "Find that video, kill it!" A weasel-faced man named Cutler, Voss's tech lackey, sat in a basement miles away, his fingers dancing over keys to erase her strike. How could they move so fast? A new video rolled out, seamless and brutal. Zara's face now swung the rope, her hands tying the knot, the teen's body jerking under her grip. A deep fake, perfect and chilling, branding her a black terrorist. Voss stepped into the alley, his boots crunching glass, his grin back in full force. "Thought you'd play me, huh?" he called out, knowing she was near, his voice a blade slicing the air. Before she could process it, a blast shook the earth, the diner erupting in flames behind her. She spun, her eyes wide, orange fire swallowing. Ruth's sanctuary, the brick walls buckling as a Molotov cocktail's rag fluttered in the wreckage. Klein emerged from the smoke, his laugh a guttural bark, tossing another bottle that shattered against the roof. "Pinned it on you, arsonist!" he shouted, his pistol raised, the barrel glinting as he aimed into the chaos. Ruth's scream pierced the roar, her figure pounding on a window, her braids wild before the glass shattered inward, silencing her forever. Zara's knees buckled, her phone slipping, the screen cracking on the pavement as the crowd from the lynching cheered again, their voices a wall of hate blaming her, the dangerous animal Voss had branded her. Could her victory have torched everything? Deputies fanned out, their flashlights slicing the dark, closing in as she ran, her legs burning, thorns ripping her pants as she dove into a ditch. Klein's bullet whizzed past, a hot sting grazing her shoulder, doubling her wounds, but she kept moving, the fire's heat licking her back. Voss's voice blared from every cruiser, "Zara Cole, murderer, arsonist, enemy of Oak Ridge, no mercy." The town's white elite watched from their porches, nodding approval, their money fueling this war. She hid under a bridge, the river's murmur drowning her ragged breaths, her shoulder oozing blood, her ribs a furnace. Had she misjudged Voss's cruelty? The night stretched on, Oak Ridge a maze of hate hunting her down, the deepfake looping in her skull, Ruth's scream fading to ash. She'd recorded the lynching, thought it'd break Voss, but he'd twisted it, erased it, turned her into the villain. The diner was gone, Ruth's life snuffed out, her hope reduced to cinders. Klein's shadow loomed upstream, his flashlight sweeping, his growl a promise of more pain. She pressed into the mud, her body shaking, the cracked phones, battery dying in her hand. She'd wanted to save them, hadn't she? Instead, she'd lit a fuse Voss turned into a bomb. His machine wasn't just strong, it was a beast fed by racism so deep it choked the air. Drop a comment number 1 if you're gutted by Ruth's fate. Hit that like if Klein's deepfake has you boiling, and subscribe to see Zara fight this inferno. Will her next move outsmart Voss's fire, or is she running out of shadows? The Oak Ridge dawn broke grey and heavy. The riverbank slick with mud where Zara Cole hid under a crumbling bridge, her shoulder pulsing with pain from Ray Klein's grazing bullet, her arm still raw from his earlier shot. Her clothes clung to her, soaked from the night's flight. The cracked phone in her pocket dead, its battery drained after uploading the lynching video that Sheriff Clayton Voss had twisted into a deep fake. Mama Ruth's diner lay in ashes, her screams silenced by Voss's firebomb. The town now a manhunt's playground with Zara as the prey. Her ribs ached, a fire stoked by every breath, her apron torn to rags, blood mixing with mud on her dark skin. She'd thought the video would break Voss, expose his filth to the world, but he'd turned it against her, branding her a black terrorist, as Oak Ridge's white elite cheered. 2 hours until the FBI arrived, Lena Price had promised, but time crawled in this hell. Could she hold on that long? A rustle in the brush snapped her head up, her heart pounding as a figure emerged, hesitant and slight. Sarah Tate, a white rookie, cop with short blonde hair and a nervous gait, stepped into view, her uniform wrinkled from a sleepless shift. She was 24, barely a month on the force, her blue eyes flickering with doubt Zara had noticed back at the station whenever Voss spat slurs. Sarah crouched low, her voice a whisper. "I saw the diner, the kid on the rope. I'm done with them. Let me help." Her hands trembled, clutching a key ring, but her words rang with a raw edge. Zara hesitated, her body aching, her mind a tangle of suspicion and desperation. Could she trust anyone after Voss's machine had crushed every spark she'd lit? Sarah's face was pale, her breath hitching, but she pressed on. "Slade's a monster. I've got proof to end this." Zara studied her, her gut twisting. She'd seen Sarah wince at Klein's fists, dodge Burke's crude jabs, a flicker of decency in a den of wolves. Alone, she was prey, bleeding out in this ditch, but with Sarah maybe she could strike back. She nodded, her voice a rasp. "Show me." They slipped through the woods, the river's gurgle masking their steps, Sarah's sneakers crunching softly beside Zara's limping stride. The air was thick, 90 degrees even at sunrise, sweat beading on her brow as they reached a gravel lot near the station. Voss's black cruiser sat there, its paint gleaming under a lone street lamp, a beast waiting to pounce. Sarah unlocked it, her breath shaky, and popped the console. "Dashcam," she muttered, ejecting a small drive, her fingers fumbling. "He never wipes it." Zara's pulse spiked, her ribs protesting as she leaned in, the footage flickering to life on a tiny screen Sarah plugged into her phone. Grainy but damning, it showed Voss driving 2 nights ago, Klein beside him, their faces lit by the dashboard glow. A black protester, Tanisha Reed, 16 with braids and a sign reading "Justice for Malik," stood on the road ahead, her silhouette stark against the headlights. Voss laughed, a cold, hollow sound that chilled Zara's blood. "Roadkill," he said, slamming the gas. The screen jolted. Tanisha's scream cut short as the cruiser plowed through her, her body tumbling into the ditch like a rag doll. Klein whooped, pounding the dash, his tattoo flexing. "One less to deal with." Voss's rant rolled on, his voice a snarl. "Black lives are nothing but dirt under my wheels." Zara's stomach lurched, her fists clenching so tight her nails drew blood. Tanisha, another name on her list. A kid who dared to march after Jerome's rally. This was it, wasn't it? Raw proof of Voss's murder, caught in his own words, his own hands. She pictured the headlines, the outrage, his smirk wiped clean as the nation turned on him. Sarah's hands shook as she slipped the drive into her pocket, her voice firm now. "I'll take it to the DA in Knoxville. They can't ignore this." Zara exhaled, a rush of relief flooding her, easing the fire in her ribs for a fleeting second. Tanisha's death, captured live, was a sledgehammer to Voss's throne. "Go," she rasped, her throat dry. "I'll lay low." Sarah nodded. Darting off toward town, the drive clutched tight, her blonde hair vanishing into the trees. Had Zara finally found a crack in Voss's armor? Hours passed, the sun climbing high, Oakridge simmering under a tense quiet that felt like the calm before a storm. Zara hid in an abandoned shed half a mile from the lot, its roof sagging, the air thick with dust and the tang of rust. Her shoulder throbbed, her arm a mess of dried blood. But she peered through a broken window, scanning the road for any sign of Lena's teams. The feds were early, weren't they? Her chest swelled with hope, fragile but growing, as a chopper buzzed overhead, its blades slicing the air, a faint FBI logo glinting through the haze. She stepped out, waving her good arm ready to signal Lena's arrival. When a cruiser screeched up, Voss at the wheel, his pale face a mask of triumph. Sarah climbed out beside him, her rookie uniform crisp, her blue eyes cold as ice. She tossed. The dashcam drive to Voss, her lips curling into a smirk. "Got her," she said, her voice steady, mocking. Zara's knees buckled, her breath stolen as Voss crushed the drive under his boot, glass and metal crunching into the gravel. "Nice try," he sneered, his grey eyes glinting with glee. "Sarah's been mine since day one." Sarah's nervous act melted away, replaced by a chilling calm, her hands steady as she crossed her arms. "Told you I'd help," she said, her tone a knife twisting in Zara's gut. "Helped him, not you." Voss laughed, pulling a laptop from the cruiser, clicking play with a flourish. The dashcam footage rolled again, but twisted. Zara's face now sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel. Tanisha's body crumpling under her tires. Gay deepfake, seamless and brutal, pinning the murder on her with chilling precision. "You're the killer now," Voss said, his grin widening, a predator savoring the kill. How had she fallen for this? The chopper hovered, but no agents dropped, its tail swinging away as Voss waved it off, tapping his radio. "My boy's up there," he said, his voice thick with satisfaction, spreading this to every news outlet in the state. Within minutes, Oakridge's airwaves crackled, TVs in every white-owned shop blaring the fake video. Zara Cole, rogue janitor, murders protester in cold blood. A reporter's voice droned, the town's white folks nodding, their hate reignited. Klein rolled up, his pistol drawn, his hulking frame leaping from his cruiser, his tattooed arm flexing as he fired a shot that splintered the shed's wall inches from Zara's head. She dove back inside, her shoulders screaming, her mind reeling as she crawled under a rusted tractor, mud caking her hands, her pulse a frantic drumbeat. Sarah's betrayal cut deeper than Klein's bullet, didn't it? Zara had trusted her, handed her the key to Voss's end, only to watch it turn into a noose. The shed's shadow swallowed her as Klein kicked the door down, his boots crunching glass, his growl booming. "Come out, rat!" Bullets punched holes in the walls, dust raining. Down as she rolled out, sprinting for the trees, his curses chasing her. The town turned feral, white voices shouting her name, their rage fueled by Voss's edit. "Killer!" a woman screeched from the road, her kids pelting the shed with rocks. Zara's chest tightened, her vision blurring as she stumbled into the woods, thorns tearing at her legs, her shoulder a fire that wouldn't fade. The fake footage looped in her skull, Tanisha's scream now pinned on her, a lie so bold it stuck. Voss's cruiser peeled off, Sarah's laugh fading into the roar, the chopper circling above, broadcasting her guilt. She'd thought Sarah was her lifeline, a crack in the machine, but now she was a ghost in Oakridge, framed for a murder Voss had laughed through. Her ribs flared with every step, her arm bleeding anew, the woods swallowing her as she ran. The feds were still out there, Lena oblivious to this twist, but how could she reach them now? Oakridge's white elite clapped Voss on the back, their money flowing, their hate a flood she couldn't outrun. Sarah's cold eyes haunted her, A rookie mask peeled back to reveal Voss's pawn. She'd been blind, hadn't she? Now, as Klein's boots echoed behind her, she wondered if this was the end of her fight. The Oak Ridge noon sun baked the town square, its cracked pavement shimmering with heat, the air thick with dust and the sour tang of sweat as Zara Cole stumbled from the wood's edge. Her shoulder pulsed with pain from Ray Klein's grazing. Bullet, her leg raw from Sarah Tate's shot, her ribs a throbbing ache from the mob's earlier blows. Her apron hung in shredded strips, blood and mud caking her dark skin, her breath a rasp after fleeing Sarah's betrayal and Voss's deep fake that pinned Tanisha Reed's murder on her. Sheriff Clayton Voss had turned Oak Ridge into a lynch mob, his fake footage blaring on every TV, branding her a killer while the real murderer laughed. She'd trusted Sarah, thought the dashcam would bury him, only to watch it twist into a noose around her neck. Could she still find a foothold in this quicksand of hate? Her legs trembled as she reached the square's outskirts, the buzz of voices swelling into a roar. Voss's voice boomed from a loudspeaker rigged to a flagpole, chilling the air. "We've got her, folks. Time for justice." Deputies swarmed from the shadows, Klein's hulking frame leading, his pistol holstered but his fists clenched, his swastika tattoo flexing with every step. Was this the end of her run? They grabbed her, their hands twisting her arms, wrenching her shoulder until she bit her lip to stifle a scream. Blood dripped onto the pavement as they dragged her into the open, the square filling fast with white townsfolk pouring from Pineview, their eyes wild with rage, clutching pipes, bats, anything that could bruise flesh. "Citizens arrest!" Voss bellowed from a makeshift platform, his pale face flushed with triumph, his khaki uniform crisp despite the chaos. "Zara Cole, murderer, arsonist, threat to our Oak Ridge." The crowd roared, their voices a wall of venom, chanting slurs. That cut deeper than knives. "She's stealing our town!" A woman shrieked, her blonde hair tangled, her kids hurling rocks that pelted Zara's legs. "Get her kind out!" a man spat, waving a Confederate flag, his sunburned neck red with fury. Klein chained her wrists to a lamppost, the metal biting her skin, her blood pooling beneath her feet as the mob pressed in. Could this be their endgame? The first blow came fast, a pipe crashing into her back, the crack echoing as pain flared. White hot, her knees buckling, the chains holding her up. A wiry man with a sunburned neck swung next, his bat slamming her ribs, the same ones Klein had cracked, his voice raw with racial fury. "You don't belong here." The mob surged, a sea of white faces, their chants a rhythm of hate. Kill her, burn her. Zara's vision swam, blood streaming into her eyes as a teenage boy, barely 16, smashed a bottle across her forehead, glass shattering, the sting blinding her. Was this Oak Ridge's true face laid bare? She blinked it away, her body a furnace of agony, her mind fogging with flashes. Malik's swollen face, Jerome's burning car, Ruth's scream, Tanisha's crumpled body. She'd fought for them, hadn't she? Now she was their scapegoat, their blood on her chains. The crowd parted for a moment, revealing Voss on the platform, his arms crossed, his laugh a low rumble over their din. "See what happens when you cross me," he shouted, his grey eyes locked on hers, daring her to break. Klein circled, tossing a tire iron to a burly guy in a trucker hat who drove it into her stomach, knocking the wind from her lungs. She gasped, her head lolling, the world tilting as the mob fed on her pain, their cheers spiking with every hit. How long could she endure this? A woman screeched, clawing at Zara's face, nails drawing red lines across her cheek, her voice a banshee wail. "No place for you here!" The ritual pulsed with rage, rooted in her blackness, a public execution staged for Voss's glory. Klein grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up, his tattoo inches from her face. "You're done," he growled, slamming his fist into her jaw, teeth rattling loose. She spat blood, her defiance a flickering ember in the storm. Had all her moves led to this? Then the sky roared, not with thunder but with engines, a sound that split the air and froze the crowd mid-swing. Pickup trucks, rusted and loud, barreled through the barricades, black men and women leaping out, clad in dark. Hoodies, their faces masked, guns gleaming in the harsh light. Leading them was Dante Brooks, a wiry ex-Marine with a scar across his cheek, his eyes blazing as he barked, "Get her!" Bullets pinged off the pavement, deputies diving for cover as the militia opened fire, a hail of lead driving Klein back, his tattoo vanishing behind a car as he returned shots. Could salvation rise from these shadows? Dante's crew moved fast, a woman with dreadlocks, Kessia, slicing through Zara's chains with bolt cutters, her grip strong despite the chaos. "We've been watching," she said, pulling Zara up, her voice steady. "Stockpiled for this day." Zara staggered, her legs jelly, blood dripping from her forehead, but adrenaline surged, her chest swelling with a flicker of hope. These were Oak Ridge's outcasts, black folks who'd hoarded weapons in secret, waiting for Voss's reign to crack. "Take him down," she rasped, clutching Kessia's shoulder, her vision blurring but her will unbroken. They dragged her to a truck, tires squealing as they peeled out, Voss's voice screaming over the loudspeaker. "Terrorists? Kill them. All!" Dante tossed her a pistol, his grin fierce, and the militia roared out, loaded with fighters, Zara in the back, her gun cocked. Was this her chance to strike back? The convoy rolled along Highway 12, 3 black SUVs gleaming under the noon sun, Voss's empire on wheels. Dante's trucks flanked it, cutting off escape, and Zara leaned out, firing at the tires, rubber shredding, metal sparking as the lead SUV swerved. Kessia lobbed a Molotov, flames erupting across its hood, the second truck ramming the rear. Glass shattering as deputies spilled out, screaming. Zara spotted Voss in the middle SUV, his pale face lit by the fire, his radio barking orders. She aimed, pulled the trigger, the bullet punching through his window, and the car veered, crashing into a ditch. Had she just ended him? Explosives detonated, a deafening boom as Dante's crew blew the crashed SUV sky high, flames licking the night, debris raining down. Cheers erupted, Kessia slapping Zara's back, her dreadlocks whipping as she reloaded. "He's toast!" Zara stared at the inferno, her chest heaving, the heat searing her bruised skin, relief washing over her like rain. Voss's convoy was a graveyard, his deputies fleeing into the woods, their screams fading. She'd done it, hadn't she? The man who'd framed Melik, burned Ruth, lynched kids, he was ash now. She sank against the truck, her gun slipping, her body trembling, the militia's fists pumping around her. Was Oak Ridge finally free? But the dust settled, and a figure emerged from the smoke, unscathed, his uniform singed, but his stride unbroken. Clayton Voss alive, his pale hands clutching a shotgun, his grin a slash of white in the chaos. "Decoy!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the roar. "You think I'd ride with him?" Zara's stomach dropped, her victory curdling as he raised the gun, firing into the militia. Dante ducked, but a slug grazed Kessia's arm, blood welling fast as she cursed. Voss laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Savages don't win." "In my town!" How had he outplayed her again? The decoy car burned, a distraction while he stood tall, his racism a war cry, his shotgun tearing through the survivors as they scattered. Zara's pistol clicked empty, her hands shaking, her false triumph a blade in her gut. The Oak Ridge dusk painted the sky a bruised purple, the highway still smoldering from the militia's ambush. Twisted metal and ash marking the graveyard of Sheriff Clayton Voss's decoy convoy. Zara Cole crouched in the back of Dante Brooks's rusted pickup, her shoulder a throbbing knot from Ray Klein's bullet, her leg bleeding from Sarah Tate's shot, her ribs screaming with every jolt of the truck. Her apron was gone, shredded in the mob's beating, blood and mud caking her dark skin, her pistol heavy in her trembling hand. She'd fired at Voss, watched his SUV explode in a fireball, thought she'd ended him, only to see him rise from the smoke, alive, his shotgun blazing. Dante, the wiry ex-Marine with a scarred cheek, gripped the wheel, his eyes fierce, while Kessia, her dreadlocks matted with blood from Voss's graze, reloaded beside her. The militia had saved her from the square's execution, but Voss's survival turned their victory to dust. Could they still trap the beast? The truck roared toward Oak Ridge Dam, a concrete giant looming over the river, its floodgates a silent threat to the Black District below. Voss's silhouette flickered atop the structure, his charred uniform fluttering in the wind. his hands on a console wired with explosives, red lights blinking like angry eyes. Zara's chest tightened, her breath ragged as Dante skidded to a stop at the base, gravel crunching under the tires. "He's rigging it," he hissed, pointing up, his scar twitching. "Flood the lowlands, wipe 'em out." The Black District, a sprawl of clapboard homes and trailers where Malik's family, Grace, and countless others lived, lay vulnerable beneath the dam's shadow. Voss's voice carried on the breeze, a ragged snarl. "No black woman outsmarts me!" Zara's stomach lurched, her resolve hardening. Hadn't she come too far to let him drown her people? Dante's crew spilled out 10 strong, their hoodies dark against the fading light, rifles gleaming as they fanned up the dam's service ladder. Zara followed, her leg afire that wouldn't quit, her shoulder pulsing, but she climbed, rung by rung, the metal cold under her blood-slick hands. Kessia covered her, her pistol barking at deputies scrambling below, their shouts swallowed by the river's roar. The wind whipped Zara's face as she reached the top, her eyes locking on Voss, his pale skin ghostly in the dusk, his grey eyes wild with hate. He flipped switches, the console's timer ticking down from 60 seconds, a death knell for the district below. Could she stop him one last time? She raised her pistol, her arm shaking, and fired, the bullet punching his chest, blood blooming. Dark across his uniform, Voss stumbled, clutching the console, his grin fading as he slumped against the railing, his shotgun clattering to the platform. The timer froze at 10 seconds, its red glow dimming, the river calm below. Zara exhaled, her knees buckling, relief flooding her veins like cool water. Had she finally struck the killing blow? Dante climbed up, his scar glistening with sweat, and kicked Voss's limp form, the man's pale face slack, his eyes blank. "Got him," he said, his voice rough, a nod sealing the moment. The dam held its floodgates still, Oakridge spared his final racist flood. Zara sank to the platform, her pistol slipping, her breath a shudder as she stared at Voss's corpse. Every death flashed through her. Malik's frame-up, Jerome's car, Ruth's diner, Tanisha's body. She'd fought for them, bled for them, and now their killer lay dead, his empire crumbling. Was this her victory at last? The militia cheered below, their voices rising over the river's murmur, fists pumping as deputies fled into the woods, their radios silent. Zara's chest heaved, her body trembling, the heat of battle fading into a fragile calm. She'd stopped the flood, saved what was left, turned Voss's hate into dust, hadn't she? The dam's concrete stood firm, the timer dead, the Black District breathing free for the first time in months. Dante gripped her arm, his grin fierce. "He's done," he said, his scar twitching with grim satisfaction. She nodded, her strength ebbing, her blood pooling on the platform. The fight was over, the beast slain. Could Oakridge heal from this? But the night wasn't done. A low rumble shook the ground, a growl growing beneath their feet as cracks spidered across the dam's face. Zara's head snapped up, her relief curdling as Ray Klein emerged from the shadows below, his hulking frame leaping from a jeep, his tattooed arms snaking to the dashboard. He slammed a hidden button, his growl booming over the chaos. "Back up!" A second detonator beeped, buried deep in the dam's core, its sound a death knell louder than the first. The ground quaked, concrete splintering as water burst free, a wall of muddy rage surging toward the Black District. Zara's stomach dropped, her victory shattering as the flood roared, swallowing homes, trees, lives in a merciless tide. Klein laughed, peeling out in his jeep, his voice a taunt. Voss's last gift. The dam groaned, its structure collapsing, the timer a decoy for Klein's kill switch. Zara clung to the railing, water spraying her face, her leg bleeding into the chaos as Dante grabbed her, pulling her down the ladder, the platform buckling beneath them. Voss's body tumbled into the torrent, swept away like trash, his pale hands vanishing in the churn. Below the Black District drowned, screams piercing the night, survivors fleeing to rooftops as the river claimed everything. Zara hit the ground, her vision blurring, Dante dragging her back, his breath hot. "We lost," he rasped, his scar. A slash of despair, his eyes hollow. She'd shot Voss, stopped the timer, thought she'd won, hadn't she? Now half the town was underwater, Klein's detonator flipping her triumph into a grave. A speaker crackled on the dam's edge, Voss's voice rising from the static, a pre-recorded taunt echoing over the flood. "You kill me, I still take them. Hall!" The words sank in, cold and sharp, his laugh a ghost in the roar. Zara stared at the devastation, homes vanishing, lives erased, her chest tightening as the water surged. Her pistol lay lost in the chaos, her strength fading, her leg afire that wouldn't quit. Dante propped her against a rock, his hands shaking, the militia scattered in the wreckage. She'd rallied them, thought she'd ended Voss, but his machine struck back harder, uglier, deadlier. The flood swallowed the district. Grace's trailer gone, Malik's dreams with it. The survivors' cries a haunting chorus. Klein's jeep faded into the distance, his laughter lingering, a shadow of Voss's will. Choppers buzzed overhead. Not FBI, but Voss's allies, their spotlights sweeping as they broadcast the lie. Terrorist Zara Cole floods Oak Ridge. TVs in white homes blared her name, their hate reignited, the narrative twisting her fight into their victory. She'd stopped the timer, killed the man, thought she'd saved them, but Klein's move drowned her hope. Her shoulder throbbed, her leg bled, her allies dwindled. Oak Ridge, a battlefield she'd lost. Voss was dead, his body swept away, but his final act lived, a flood that buried her people under his racism's weight. She leaned against the rock, her breath shallow, the water lapping at her feet. Had she just handed Voss his ultimate win? The Oak Ridge night was a shroud of smoke and ruin, the Black District's flooded remnants glowing faintly under a red-streaked dawn, water lapping at shattered rooftops where survivors clung, their cries lost in the river's relentless hum. Zara Cole lay propped against a rock near the breached dam, her leg a bloody mess from Ray Klein's shot, her shoulder a throbbing knot from his earlier graze, her ribs a furnace stoked by every breath. Dante Brooks slumped beside her, his scar slick with sweat, his breath ragged, his militia scattered or dead after Klein's detonator unleashed Voss's final flood. Sheriff Clayton Voss's body had vanished in the torrent, his death a hollow. Victory as the Black District drowned under his pre-recorded taunt. "You kill me, I still take them all." Zara's pistol was gone, swept away with her strength, her dark skin caked with mud and blood, her fight reduced to ashes. Could she still rise from this wreckage? Headlights flared in the distance, a convoy rolling in. Not the FBI, but state troopers, their badges gleaming as they cut through the haze. Leading them was Governor Eli Nash, a white man with slick black hair and a politician's smile, his suit pristine amid the chaos, his 6-foot frame exuding control. He stepped from a sleek SUV, his voice smooth as oil. "Elliot Cole, you're done." Troopers swarmed, their boots splashing mud, rifles glinting as they closed in. Klein at their flank, his hulking form a wall of hate, his swastika tattoo flexing as he grinned. Dante lunged, his fists swinging, but a trooper's baton cracked, his skull dropping him limp in the muck. Zara scrambled, her leg dragging, her hands clawing mud, but they seized her, cuffs snapping tight, wrenching her shoulder until she gasped. Nash's eyes glinted, his smile unwavering. "Sheriff Voss was a martyr. You're the terrorist." The troopers hauled her through the flood's edge, water soaking her to the waist, her body a wreck as they dragged her to the courthouse steps, its white columns looming like a mockery of justice. Oak Ridge buzzed with reporters and a white mob, their pipes and bats raised, cheering Klein as he shoved her forward, her blood dripping onto the stone. Voss's ghost lingered in their shouts, a hero in their twisted tale. Nash climbed the steps, his hands raised like a savior, his voice booming over the chaos. "Justice prevails. Terrorist Zara Cole stopped." The crowd roared, their hate a tidal wave, her name a curse on every lip. She'd killed Voss, hadn't she? Why was she the villain now? Klein chained her to a pillar, the metal biting her wrists, her leg afire as reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, broadcasting her defeat live. Inside, the courtroom was a cavern of polished wood and stale air, packed with Oak Ridge's elite, their pale faces smug, their whispers sharp as knives. Nash sat at the defense table, his suit crisp, his smirk unshaken. while a gaunt judge named Hargrove with a silver mustache and a dry voice banged his gavel. Zara Cole, charged with murder, arson, terrorism. How do you plead? The nation watched, Voss's fake video of Tanisha's death still fresh, the flood pinned on her, Ruth's diner a smoldering lie. Zara stood, her chains clinking, her body a ruin but her voice steady despite the pain. Not guilty, and I've got proof. Could she turn their stage into her weapon? She reached into her torn shirt, pulling a tiny audio recorder, its casing, scratched but intact, hidden since her first days undercover. The room erupted, gasps ricocheting, reporters scrambling as Nash's smirk faltered for a split second. She hit play, and Voss's voice filled the air, raw and damning. Planted it myself, keeps Oakridge pure, he bragged, confessing Malik's frame up, followed by orders to burn Jerome's rally, lynch the teen, run down Tanisha. Every word was a nail in his coffin, echoing through the courtroom's stunned silence. Your Honor, Zara said, her tone cutting through the murmurs. I'm not just a janitor. I'm Zara Cole, director of the FBI. The gallery froze, Hargrove's eyes widening, his gavel hovering as the truth sank in. Had she just flipped the script? Nash's lawyer, a slick man named Grayson in a $1,000 suit, shot up, his face red. Objection, she's a race-baiting. Liar unfit for any title, that's doctored. But Zara held firm, her gaze locking on Nash. Check my credentials, Your Honor. I've been undercover, watching this monster and his puppet. Hargrove leaned forward, his voice tight, the room a powder keg. This is serious, I'll verify. He nodded to a clerk, who darted out, and for a moment Zara breathed, her ribs aching but her spirit lifting. The audio was gold. Wasn't it? Voss's own words, live on air, broadcast to millions, a blade to Nash's throat. Could justice finally claw its way free? The clerk returned, pale, clutching a file, his voice stammering. FBI confirms, she's Director Cole. The gallery erupted again, Nash's elite shifting uncomfortably, their whispers turning to panic as Hargrove banged his gavel, silencing them. Sheriff Voss, he said, his tone ice. You're under arrest. Two bailiffs moved, their hands on cuffs, but Nash stood, his chair scraping, his face twisting as he waved them off. Zara's chest swelled, her bruises forgotten, a flicker of triumph warming her blood. She'd surrendered to win, hadn't she? But Eli Nash didn't bend to cuffs. The doors crashed open, Ray Klein bursting in, his hulking frame filling the entrance, a shotgun in his hands, his tattooed arm pumping the weapon. Not today, he roared, his voice a thunderclap that froze the bailiffs. Hargrove ducked as Klein fired, the blast shattering the judge's bench, wood splintering, blood spraying as the silver-mustached man slumped, his eyes blank, dead before he hit the floor. Chaos exploded, reporters screaming, the mob surging. As Nash ripped free, his laugh wild. My town, my rules, he bellowed, grabbing Klein's arm. Had Zara's gambit just backfired? Klein shoved through, deputies rallying, their guns drawn, shielding Nash as he stormed the dais. She's the killer, Nash shouted, pointing at Zara, his voice booming over the panic. Framed me, murdered the judge. The lie was bold, insane, but the white elite nodded, their hate swallowing it whole. Nash grabbed a torch from a deputy, a literal flame flaring in his hand, and hurled it at the prosecution table, papers igniting, smoke curling fast. Burn it down, he roared, and Klein fired again, the shotgun tearing through the clerk's desk, files exploding into ash. Zara dove behind a bench, her chains snagging, her heart pounding as the courthouse blazed, flames licking the walls, the ceiling groaning. Was this Nash's escape? Deputies herded him out, Klein covering their retreat with blasts that punched holes in the plaster, the mob cheering, their pipes raised, chanting his name like a god's. Arson against justice, Nash yelled, pinning it on her as he vanished through a side door, his slick hair glinting in the firelight. Zara coughed, smoke stinging her lungs, her hands fumbling at the chains as the bailiffs fled, Hargrove's body slumped in the wreckage. The courtroom was a furnace, Nash's making, her triumph torched before it could take root. She kicked free of the cuffs, the metal clattering, and crawled through the haze, her shoulder screaming, her ribs a fire of their own. The recorder lay smashed, Klein's bootprint on its corpse, her proof reduced to plastic shards. Outside, sirens wailed, but not FBI, just Nash's loyalists locking down Oakridge under martial law. TVs blared the spin. FBI Director burns courthouse in terrorist coup, the nation watching as Nash turned her truth into his lie. She stumbled into a hallway, flames chasing her, her leg dragging her victory, a trap he'd sprung. Had she just handed him the keys to bury her deeper? The Oakridge courthouse smoldered under a sky choked with ash, its white columns blackened husks as the dawn broke jagged and red, the floodwaters of the Black District still lapping at shattered homes miles away. Zara Cole stumbled from the burning building, her leg a bloody ruin from Ray Klein's shot, her shoulder a throbbing knot from his earlier graze, her ribs screaming with every step. Governor Eli Nash had torched the courtroom, killed Judge Hargrove, and turned her FBI reveal into his victory, the nation watching as he pinned the blaze on her. Dante Brooks lay dead by the dam, the militia crushed, her recorder smashed under Klein's boot, her proof reduced to cinders. Blood and mud caked her dark skin, her strength fading, but surrender wasn't an option. Could she still claw her way out of this inferno? Troopers swarmed the courthouse steps, their boots pounding the stone, rifles glinting in the early light as they dragged her from the hallway's smoke. Klein loomed behind, his hulking frame a wall of hate, his swastika tattoo flexing as he shoved her forward, her wrists raw from the chains they'd snapped back on. The air buzzed with reporters and a white mob, their pipes and bats raised, cheering Nash as he emerged from his SUV, his slick hair untouched by the chaos, his politicians, smile pristine. "Justice prevails," he boomed, climbing the steps, his suit crisp, his hands raised like a king anointed by their hate. The crowd roared, their voices a tidal wave. Terrorist Zara Cole stopped. Her name was a curse again, spat from every lip, the flood, the fire, all hers in their twisted tale. She'd exposed Nash, hadn't she? Why was she still the prey? Klein chained her to a pillar, the metal biting her skin, her leg afire as blood pooled beneath her, a public spectacle redux under the camera's glare. Nash turned, his eyes glinting, his speech rolling on like poison. "She flooded our town, killed our kids, burned our courthouse, but we've won." The lie was seamless, Voss's ghost grinning through his words, the nation swallowing it whole. A sniper's red dot danced on her chest, the crowd hushing, anticipation thick as the humid air. Zara braced, her breath shallow, her fight drained. The troopers' rifles trained on her like a firing squad. Was this the end they'd scripted? Then the shot cracked, sharp and final, her body jerking as blood exploded across her shirt, a crimson bloom that soaked the stone. She slumped, the chains rattling, her head lolling, the mob erupting in cheers that shook the steps. Nash's grin widened, his arms waving as he soaked in their adoration, troopers saluting, Klein pounding his chest, the cameras zooming on her limp form. Blood pooled beneath her, a river on white stone, the nation watching her die, their scapegoat silenced. She'd stopped Voss, exposed Nash, thought her truth would free her, but now she was a martyr to their hate, wasn't she? The air shifted, murmurs rippling through the mob as Nash stepped down, his speech done, his victory sealed. The sniper lowered his rifle, a shadow in the courthouse window, his job complete. Then Zara twitched, her head lifting, her eyes snapping open, blood still wet but her breath steady, a faint pulse beneath the chaos. The crowd gasped, their cheers faltering, Nash freezing mid-stride, his slick hair glinting as he spun. She whispered, her voice a thread through the silence, faked it. The blood was a prop, a bag beneath her shirt. Her collapse a ruse planned with Agent Lena Price days ago, before the dam, before the flood. Had she just outplayed them all? She yanked free of the chains, a hidden pin snapping the cuffs, her leg still bleeding but her will unbroken, the troopers hesitating as she stood. "I'm not done," she said louder now, the cameras swiveling, the nation leaning in as she pointed at Nash. "He's the root. Voss was his dog." The crowd stilled, their pipes lowering, doubt creeping into their eyes, the reporters scrambling as her words hit live air. Nash's face paled, his troopers shifting, Klein's growl stuck in his throat. She'd survived, hadn't she? Now she'd hunt the shadow behind the shadow. The plan had been desperate, hatched in a stolen moment with Lena after the ledger burned. A last-ditch play to flip their game. She'd let them shoot, let them cheer, let them think her dead, all to expose Nash's hand when they least expected. Could this be the crack to shatter his throne? She straightened, her leg trembling, her shoulder afire, but her gaze locked on Nash, unwavering. "You think Voss ran this alone?" she said, her voice cutting through the hush. "Check the money, the orders, the bombs, it's you." Nash laughed, a forced bark, but his eyes darted, his smooth mask cracking as the troopers wavered, their rifles dipping. The nation heard her, the truth slicing through the lies, Oakridge's white elite freezing, their cheers dying as Voss's myth crumbled. But the victory twisted again. A rifle cracked from the rooftop, a sharp report that split. The air and Lena Price stumbled from the crowd's edge, her small frame crumpling, blood blooming across her chest. Zara's scream caught in her throat, her ally falling, the sniper's bullet real this time, not staged. Lena's steel-grey eyes met hers, fading fast, her burner phone clattering to the stone as she gasped, "Run!" The mob surged, their doubt replaced by rage, Nash seizing the chaos, his voice booming. "Rogue FBI killer!" He pointed at Zara, his grin returning, the troopers rallying as he backed away, Klein's rifle swinging toward her. Had her masterstroke just cost her? Everything. The sniper, a shadow hired by Nash's unseen backer, melted into the haze, his work done as Nash retreated, his SUV peeling off, Klein covering him with a snarl. "She shot her own," Nash shouted, the lie hitting fast, TVs blaring it across. The state. FBI director murders agent in cold blood. The crowd roared, their hate reignited, pipes swinging as they closed in, troopers firing warning shots that chewed the steps. Zara dove behind the pillar, her leg afire, her shoulder screaming. Lena's blood pooling 10 feet away, her last ally gone. She'd faked her death, turned their victory into a stage, exposed Nash's hand, hadn't she? Now it was ashes. Her triumph flipped into a new noose. She crawled, her hands slick with Lena's blood, the mob's shouts a wall of fury, the cameras rolling as Nash vanished into the smoke. The courthouse steps cleared, troopers tightening their net, Klein's boots echoing as he advanced, his laugh a guttural bark. "No feds saving you now," he growled, his pistol tapping her pillar. She'd let them think her dead, thought. She'd won a breath, but Nash had snatched it, turned her strike into his shield. Her leg bled freely, her strength ebbing, the floodwaters receding in the distance as black survivors emerged, their voices faint amid the ruin. She'd saved what she could, cracked their lie, but the cost was Lena, her lifeline severed. The sniper's shot lingered in her skull, Nash's escape a taunt. Had she just handed him the war? The Oakridge morning broke raw and jagged, the courthouse steps a charred battlefield, smoke curling from the ruins as the floodwaters receded, leaving the Black District a graveyard of splintered homes and drowned dreams. Zara Cole limped through, the chaos, her leg a bloody mess from Ray Klein's shot, her shoulder a throbbing knot from his earlier graze, her ribs a furnace stoked by the mob's blows. Agent Lena Price's blood stained her hands, the sniper's bullet a fresh wound in her soul, Governor Eli Nash's escape a taunt echoing in the air. She'd faked her death, exposed Nash on live TV, thought she'd turned their stage against them, only to watch him twist it, pinning Lena's murder on her. Troopers hunted her now, Klein's growl close behind, the nation branding her a rogue FBI killer. Could she still strike one last blow? She ducked into an alley off Main Street, her breath shallow, the hum of choppers overhead mixing with the mob's distant roars. Her dark skin glistened with sweat and blood, her clothes torn to rags, her strength ebbing as she leaned against a brick wall, its rough edge biting her palm. Nash's troopers tightened their net, their boots splashing through puddles, rifles glinting in the early light, but a glint of black caught her eye. Klein's Jeep, idling 50 yards away, its driver's door ajar. He'd leapt out to join. The hunt, leaving it unguarded, a reckless move born of his arrogance. Was this her chance to turn the tide? She staggered forward, her leg dragging, pain flaring with every step, and slipped into the driver's seat, the leather sticky with his sweat, the air thick with cigarette smoke. Her hands fumbled under the dash, her fingers brushing a hidden compartment, its latch loose. She pried it open, her breath catching as a leather-bound ledger tumbled out, its pages crisp despite the chaos. She flipped it open, her pulse spiking, rows of numbers and names sprawling across the paper in Nash's neat script. Voss, 50. Thousand-frame Malik Jones, one entry read, dated 6 months back. Klein, 20,000 burn diner tied to Ruth's death. Dam explosives, 100,000 flood Black District, pinned to the night before. Her stomach lurched, the truth raw and unfiltered. Nash wasn't just Voss's puppet. He was the architect, funding a racist empire to crush Oak Ridge's black souls. Could this be the blade to sever his roots? She pulled Lena's cracked burner phone from her pocket, its battery flickering at 5%, and connected it to the Jeep's charger, her hands shaking as she snapped photos of every page. The ledger was a map of corruption, Nash's orders. To Voss, Klein, even the troopers all laid bare. She uploaded them to a secure FBI server, her fingers frantic, the signal weak but holding as the files hit the cloud. Within minutes, she mirrored them to public platforms, Twitter, YouTube, every corner of the internet she could reach, her breath shallow as alerts buzzed, Oak Ridge corruption exposed. Riots flared online, then spilled into the streets. Black survivors emerging from the flood's wreckage, their voices rising, fists pumping as white mobs faltered, their cheers turning to shouts of confusion. Had she just ignited a fire Nash couldn't douse? The town square erupted. Protesters, clashing with troopers, rocks flying, sirens wailing as Zara slipped from the Jeep, her leg afire, her shoulder pulsing. She pictured Nash pacing, his slick hair mussed, his grin cracking as the nation turned on him, the ledger's truth a spotlight he couldn't escape. Victory pulsed through her, fragile but fierce, her bruises forgotten as she limped toward. The woods, the chaos shielding her escape. She'd saved what she could, cracked their lie wide open, hadn't she? The floodwaters receded, black voices growing louder, her name a faint hope amid the ruin. Klein's Jeep sat abandoned, troopers distracted, and she dared to believe it. Nash's empire was crumbling, her fight alive. But the sky darkened, a shadow falling over Oak Ridge as a figure emerged on every TV screen, his face sharp against the dawn, his voice cutting through the static. Cyrus Holt, a billionaire with silver hair and a grin like a blade, leaned on a cane, his dark suit pristine, his presence a whisper turned raw. "Zara Cole, race warlord," he declared, his tone smooth as silk, "has sown chaos in Oak Ridge, a terrorist cloaked as a hero." The ledger's leak paused, screens flashing his image, his words a lie so bold it stuck. "She bombed our children," he said, and a blast rocked the town, a fireball blooming over the Black District's only school, its brick walls collapsing, kids' screams cut short in the inferno. Zara's stomach dropped, her victory shattering as Holt's voice boomed, "I'll finish what Voss started." She spun, her eyes wide, the explosion's heat washing over her from miles away, smoke spiraling into the sky. Holt's private choppers buzzed overhead, their spotlights sweeping, his hired muscle dropping ropes, rifles cocked as they fanned. Out. The ledger had sparked riots, exposed Nash, but Holt flipped it, turned her strike into his war cry. Klein roared up in a new cruiser, his tattooed arm flexing, his grin wide as he shouted, "Holt's got us now." Nash stumbled from an SUV, his suit singed, his face pale, a pawn outplayed by a king. The school's ruins burned, a dozen lives. Snuffed out, Holt's bomb a parting gift to bury her deeper. Had she just awakened a monster worse than Voss? Holt's broadcast rolled on, his cane tapping as he leaned closer to the camera, his eyes glinting with malice. "Oak Ridge stands, pure under my watch. Cole's chaos ends here." The white elite nodded from their mansions, their money flowing to Holt, their hate a flood she couldn't stem. Troopers regrouped, their rifles swinging toward the woods, Klein's laugh echoing as he advanced. "Time to hunt her proper!" Zara dove behind a tree, her leg bleeding anew, her shoulder afire, her breath ragged as bullets chewed bark inches from her head. The riots faltered, black protesters scattering under Holt's assault, their hope drowning in the school's ashes. She'd leaked the ledger, thought it'd end Nash, but Holt turned it into his crown, framing her as the villain who'd bombed her own. The choppers circled, their blades slicing the air, Holt's voice a ghost, taunting her failure. "Governors, mine," he'd said in Voss's recording, a hint she'd missed, his empire deeper than she'd dreamed. Nash was a puppet, Voss a dog, Klein a blade, all Holt's tools in a chess game she hadn't seen. She crawled through the underbrush, thorns tearing her skin, her strength fading, the school's screams looping in her skull. She'd rallied survivors, exposed Nash, thought she'd won, hadn't she? Now Holt stood tall, his silver hair glinting. On screens, his cane a scepter over Oakridge's ruin. The Black District was a smoldering grave, her name a curse, her fight a spark he'd snuffed with a single blast. Zara slumped against a pine, her leg a furnace, her shoulder oozing, the wood swallowing her as Klein's boots crunched closer, his pistol tapping his thigh. Holt's choppers landed, his forces spreading, the billionaire vanishing from the airwaves, his grin a promise of more. She was alive, battered but breathing, facing a war she couldn't win yet. The ledger's truth lingered online, a seed, buried in the chaos, but Holt's bomb had shifted the board. His racism a weapon sharper than Voss's flood or Nash's fire. She'd stopped one monster, shaken another, only for a titan to rise, his empire vast, his hate unyielding. Her eyes, burned fixed on the horizon, the fight not over but reborn in blood and ash. Could she face this new king? This saga of Zara Cole in Oakridge unearths raw truths about resilience, betrayal, and the fight against systemic racism. First, it shows that courage isn't just about winning battles, but enduring relentless setbacks. Zara faced beatings, frame-ups, floods and betrayal, yet kept pushing, proving grit can outlast the darkest odds. Her story screams that standing up to injustice, even when it feels hopeless, plants seeds for change. Malik's survival, the ledger's leak, all sparks in a long war. What's the takeaway? Never let the fire die, no matter how hard they try to snuff it out. Second, trust is a double-edged sword. Sarah's betrayal and Holt's shadow reveal how corruption festers in unexpected places, turning allies into traps. Zara learned this the hard way, her instincts sharpened by loss. Lena's death a brutal lesson in vigilance. Evil doesn't always announce itself. It hides in plain sight, waiting to strike. Finally, racism isn't one villain, but a hydra. Voss's death didn't end it. Klein's bomb and Holt's rise proved the system's roots run deep. Zara's fake death flipped their victory, exposing a bigger fight, teaching us justice is a war, not a moment. Oakridge's flood washed away lives, but her survival sparked hope. Every step forward counts, even when the tide pulls back. So, what's the call? Keep fighting, keep questioning, keep rising. Zara's journey isn't over and neither is ours. What do you think her next move against Holt should be? Drop a comment with your thoughts, hit that like if her grit inspires you, subscribe for more and share to spread this fire. Thanks for writing this wild tale with us. Here's to courage, justice and an Oakridge reborn stronger than ever.